And we're started. Music and all. It's coming in. You ready to go, Sam?
Let's do it.
Doing. And we're Signals from the Ashes. This is the Phoenix firm. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
It's so nice to have everyone together,
Yeah.
and I think today's topic then is crucial, right? You as director of our AI and process improvement, and me as president and founder, I think we realize that a lot of people don't necessarily know what's potentially going on within the organization, what tools their team are using, right? And that brings us to the theme of today, right? Um, What is shadow AI and what does it mean? And why did we introduce the conversation with that, right? So,
Yeah.
I think it's worth putting it in perspective. Let's define it first. What is shadow AI?
Yeah. So it's a great start because we're seeing it more and more, and we're hearing this term a lot more now, shadow AI and shadow AI. So what is it? Well, it really becomes the AI that any of the employees are using that isn't exactly authorized or approved by management. It's what's going on behind the scenes that management perhaps isn't even aware of. That's really what shadow AI is.
Yeah. So why are we talking of basically somebody using ChatGPT on the side or somebody using a platform that has AI but nobody really is aware of it? What's
Yeah.
the scope within the environment?
Absolutely. It's whatever the employees are using, again, that management is not aware of. So that could be ChatGPT. It wouldn't necessarily be like a Microsoft Copilot or something like that because that's has to be approved before users are on there. But sure, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever the LLMs are that they're using, or the tools that are using LLMs that management isn't aware of. So you may have access to it just via your browser, um, and then again, it's not being monitored. So maybe what's going out there is of concern to management, and for whatever reason, it hasn't been approved yet.
Okay, nice. And I like how you keep emphasizing management has not approved yet, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for those that might be new in the business environment and maybe not as aware of compliance, uh, what what would be the impact of a tool that is like that, that has not been approved by management? Why is it a risk to an organization?
Yeah. Well, I think organizations are not as up to date as they could be, and perhaps some of their employees are even as far as what's available and what's out there. Of course, there are risks with anything for that matter, especially when we're talking about LLMs where a lot of information could be uploaded. So you could have compliance risks. You could have risks where information is not exactly correct or how it's being used and then it's getting passed on. Um, those are the kinds of risks that any organization would be very concerned about and would want to, you know, oversee, provide governance on. Um, However, one of the major questions that needs to be asked is why are the employees doing it? And what's the advantage to them to do it? And I've said this a million times, you know this, Sam, is that AI can make you a superhuman, right? Give you superpowers, make you a rock star in your environment, and perhaps in amongst in any larger organization, in amongst your coworkers. Now you are outperforming because you're moving faster. You have more clarity. Um, something that used to take you all day is now taking only 15 minutes. So it's really asking that question of why are the employees using it? Well, because it makes them better at what they do in a lot of ways. But that speaks to the advantage of the company because they're doing it so that the company can have what they're looking for even quicker and perhaps even better. So there's positives There are also some negatives, but I think it's important to talk more even about the positives that are out there.
It's interesting, right? There was even an AI company that is currently advertising on YouTube that's always on my list of shorts, and the whole concept is the manager comes to the employee, says, "Hey, can you do this, 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 and this?" And the employee is like, "Yeah, already sent." And she's like, "How could you do it so quickly?"
Yeah.
Right? And therefore involving the idea of that your manager does not need to know really what you're doing, how you're doing it. It's okay if you can potentially use AI without that corporate governance, right? In your estimate and like as per the when we you did the investigation on the subject, how what's the percentage of employees do you think that currently uses AI without their manager or their organizational acceptance and governance?
Well, it's quite large. Is quite a bit of the employees that are using AI today, and it's they're already using it without management being aware of it. You're probably talking about 30 to 40% of your employees, even higher, are using it quite regularly now. Um, like I said, the risks are there because maybe there are risks around compliance. Management isn't sure yet what can be or should be used. They haven't been advised as such. They hear the negative stories, and so they base their decision on that. But in some of the more of the medium sized enterprises, you're talking about 60% plus of employees that are regularly using it. um, the larger organizations do have some more controls around it, but there's always ways around that, and that's what employees are looking for because it makes them superstars. So the tools that are available to the employees are slow to come to their desktop. So if it's something that has been taking you know 6 months plus for a decision to be made, well, you're still going at that normal speed that you were going at before. So you have some concerns there. First of all, the employees themselves, many of them already know that other tools could be used. And they're there, but they're not being used. And that causes frustration. And what that means for an employee who's going in this direction is they're starting to look outside a little bit. Like who else is using those tools and what's available now? Maybe I could be over there, and they start to look around. Um, or they're getting frustrated in this particular role, and your satisfaction scores for your employees start to go down because they know they can move faster, but they're getting um, somewhat restricted, so that they couldn't move. Um, the other thing about it though is that if the competition is allowing certain tools to be used, well, they're leapfrogging you. And that's a concern because now they have products, they have services that you don't have yet. And so you're actually going further and further behind. So it's like I said, positives, negatives, yes. The fact is they're out there and there's more and more tools that are available. I feel like even a week goes by and I'm already behind. And that's what I do is stay on top of what's, most recent in AI. So that means I can take no more vacation, Sam. That's true.
I will make sure of it. That's all good.
Exactly. But just staying on top of what's out there, right? And so, yeah, it creates a whole new concern, especially for the larger organizations, because again, we go back to that compliance piece. And what they're so used to is providing that governance. There are some organizations that only whitelist certain sites, right? So the
Mhm.
list is very finite. You can only get here, here, here. But then if there are other tools or ways available for the employees to get it, they could move quicker, or they could be perhaps going behind your back to do it, and that could be even a worse concern.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Um, Now, how do you see it as being a risk potentially for even further um, version control or like the fragmentation of the processes?
Well, that's just it. So, a small business maybe is not so concerned about it because I don't know how many, it depends on how many employees that you have and what each person does. The fact
Mm.
is, though, when it as it grows and you have more people, and you have, this department, um, as they start to use shadow AI, any AI for that matter, where they're building their workflows and using AI as a tool in it, it can easily become very, um, solitary, very alone. It's its own silo, and so it's not communicating with the others. And perhaps there's something that could be used over here, but they don't even necessarily know about it, about what's going on over here. So we know that that happens in every organization, right? That there's silos. You and I deal with this on a regular basis, trying to break down those silos. This, I think, would only add to that. Is that again where there isn't an approval for this, but yet it's being used, and again, where only there. And then there's this other piece that's only being used there. That's it. So again, you've got all these silos being built in new ways. The
And
fragmentation.
it's yeah, and it's interesting, right? When we think 5, 10 years ago, it would have been absurd to say, okay, each department's gonna have their own ERP. It's gonna have their own system, right? And in the last few years, it has been moving into the direction where organization move to one system and global organization try to move to one solution
Yeah.
in order to have no longer any silos, being able to follow the same processes, right? And to your point, now when you everyone starts using AI in their own little aspect,
Yeah.
then yeah, you create all of those different systems, and then you do create that risk of no longer nobody's talking to each other. The LLM only consider the biases of that department
Yeah.
and not everything else, right?
Well, and that's where, larger organizations especially, they're so used to putting in the guardrails. They've had to, quite frankly. And that's great. But are these guardrails now actually costing them more
Yeah.
because they're not necessarily set up for AI? And that's, I think, a huge challenge for the organizations because they can't move that quickly to even set up the departments or the governance that's needed. And there is still that question about, well, what's positive, what's negative, what should I do, what shouldn't I do? Again, Sam, this is where you and I sit at the table to be able to offer that advice. My role as a fractional CAIO, chief AI officer, to sit at the table as needed and um, offer that advice and what particularly applies to them. Because the organizations, first of all, in their current workflow, there's a lot of pieces now that need to be revamped because of AI. AI now needs to be added to that tool or as a tool into that workflow, and it will reshape the workflow overall. That's, I would say, step one in all of this, in the use of AI as a real strategy for your organization. So, again, starting small, and we've talked about this before, but starting small, piloting, getting the traction that you want throughout the organization, identifying who your key players are, and then, building out those workflows one by one. Yes, it's a lot of work, but it will make your organization uh, more efficient. Um, However, then you also still have, as it goes, you have, okay, well, we got new products coming on, we got new services coming on. This is what we want to do. So then where does AI fit in? And again, it's those tools that are available, and also considering the safety risks that are there to be able to sit at that table and just advise, on a weekly basis, a biweekly basis, whatever's needed, so that they're aware of it. Because otherwise, you're gonna have to pay for a CAIO, permanent full-time. Okay, now you're in a different realm of cost, right? But just as a fractional piece, it allows them to stay up to date and incorporate that in to their ongoing efforts. However, the efforts need to be there and built into the organization so that they are aware of how to go about and how to still maintain governance. It still needs to be there. Um, but how can we then provide that governance specifically for AI?
Yeah. No. And I think there is a value, as you're saying, right? Also to, yes, establish governance, but build it as a lightweight. right? It's thinking, okay, these are the guardrails we need to impose today, but keep them structured enough that the organization can move ahead and be adaptable for future growth, right? AI, if we think like 3 years ago, AI was not what it is, nowhere close to what it is right now. The technology has evolved so much. And as you said, like week to week, it evolves. So now, if an organization spends 6 months in building governance that is really rigid, then that means that every 6 months they will have to revisit what is the technology now
Yeah.
to then establish the guardrails. And then within another 6 months, it's going to have to be restarted all over again, right?
Yeah. And that's just it because they have to stay on top of it, right? So what's out there today? How can it improve? Because otherwise, you're going to have others that are doing that within the organization for you, and that's where shadow AI really comes from. So it's
Yeah.
positive. A shadow AI is as a whole is positive from the perspective of you have engaged employees that are looking to move the company further ahead. How many employees do you have today, honestly, that really want to do that? A lot of them are there simply to collect their paycheck. That's it. Have a nice day and they leave. And there are others that even throughout the weekend and evenings, why? Because their mind is still moving and, oh, I can do this, move this. Wonderful employee, but is it, like how are we as an organization evolving and staying on top of these pieces so that we can keep up? Because there are other employees as such in the other organizations that you have around you as competition. So if they are adopting these pieces and you're not, you're going to move behind. You're going to lose employees. It's going to become frustrated, all of that. So again, staying on top of it is important, but to be careful and allow some of the experimentation to go on. Within the guardrails, yes, still, so they're still there, but that definition needs to be made so that the employees feel like, "Okay, I am able to explore here. I am able to in these realms, and then what else is available to me?" You could also then identify who are your first movers in your organization. Who are these employees that are superstars, really, and they will become the sound. They will become the loudspeaker throughout the rest of the organization to say, "Hey, we can do this, we can do this," and they help others adopt. And that's really, really valuable because then again, the culture is shifting within the organization. Um, I remember not so long ago that with the advancement of technology, I know that some organizations in Mexico, overall in Mexico, as a government regulation, they allowed pilots to happen within a smaller realm. But
Mhm.
as long as it was within these small guardrails, then okay, you are allowed to pilot this without the same type of oversight that came from the government. Great, right? There's risk obviously involved, but it's also the government recognizing that, hey, these guys could perhaps tell us something new. And
Yeah.
let's keep it within these small realms so that it's not as risky or as problematic as it could be. If risks are identified here, it doesn't affect all of this, right? It's just this. So then we can tweak it. And once we have it right, now we can scale, right? So it actually is a very good thing. But again, it's that management needs to be, first of all, aware of it. And then, okay, how do we adopt it in the right way? And I always say this, start small and then you'll be able to grow from there.
No, no, I love it. And I love the approach, right? First, don't punish, just really
Yeah.
investigate.
Yeah.
Then map out those behaviors, map out the workflows that are in question that are being used, right? And then really classify them. What's the risk? What's the implication? And then build a governance based on what your the information you found, right? The investigation you've did, and use the internal champions that you have,
Yeah.
and put them in a situation to conduct those pilots that you just discussed, right? So those 5 steps really like fall flows and leads to success in an organization, definitely.
Yeah, 1,000%. And just being aware that we need to keep up because otherwise you will get leapfrogged.
Yeah. And that's a risk, right? Nobody wants to fall behind in business. And now more than ever, we want all our employees to be superhumans, right? To be superheroes that just lift the world. And and are champions in their task.
Absolutely. Yep. Shadow AI. That's it.
It's not an enemy. It's really it can be our ally if we use it properly. I
Absolutely.
think that's really key. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Ben,
got it.
amazing conversation as always. Thank you so much for your time. And to all the listeners, thank you for listening in. Looking forward to our next podcast. And don't ever forget, we have to learn from our history, and shadow AI is here. It's here to stay. Let's make sure that we move our organization forwards in line with that.
All right, let's carry it out. Thank you so much, everybody. Great to see you again, Sam, as always. We'll be in touch soon.
Likewise.